Hey everyone, welcome to Logan's Mosh Pit. Glad to have you here. Do me a favor and please subscribe if you haven't already. Gather round, bookworms, because it's time for another exciting edition of Rock and Read. Today we'll read Chapter 8 of It's So Easy and Other Lies by Duff McKagan. Chapter 8 is called Panic Attacks. Ooh. Let's see what happens to Duff. My childhood experimentation with drugs, speed, coke, LSD, mushrooms, had come to a screeching halt the day in 1981 when I had my first panic attack. I was 16. It came out of nowhere. Though I had already moved out, I was visiting my mom's house and taking a shower. Suddenly the floor of the bathtub seemed to drop 2 feet. I fell. What's happening? Now, I could barely breathe. I think I just went crazy. Something had broken inside me, and I knew it. I crawled out of the shower, soaking wet. I didn't want my mom to see me naked, but I needed help. I was terrified. Mom, help! My mom came running into the bathroom. She wrapped me in a towel. She managed to get me out of the bathroom and put a pair of sweats on me. She rushed me to the emergency room. At the ER, the doctors determined there was nothing physically wrong with me. They gave me Valium and walked me across the street to see a bearded psychologist. He wanted to talk about what I had gone through. Once the psychologist and I were alone, I revealed to him that I thought the episode was drug-induced, specifically from taking loads of mushrooms and acid. He said he highly doubted it. He drew me a diagram of some sort. He tried to explain. Despite his dubiousness about my expert medical diagnosis, I cut out the drugs from then on. The timing couldn't have been more fortuitous. In Seattle, heroin was fast becoming a staple in pretty much everyone's diet, not just musicians. With beer in hand, I watched it take over the city. The spread of the drug seemed directly related to the recession that hit the city during Ronald Reagan's first term as president. As jobs disappeared, smack oozed into the vacuum left in people's lives. Up to 1982, I heard about heroin but rarely saw it. Then suddenly, I began to see a lot of older kids starting to use heroin openly. As more and more of my contemporaries lost their jobs, smack spread quickly. It would be everywhere by 1983. At the time of the panic attack, I was living with my girlfriend Stacy. When she and I had originally hooked up, I was a punk rock outcast, and she had been dating the quarterback of the high school football team. I had been playing drums in a band called the Farts. I bet that band stinks. When we started hanging out together. Early on, Stacy rode her moped to a gig the Farts played with another band called the... That band's singer, Upchuck, was a full-on queen who was one of the first people in Seattle to die of AIDS a few years later. He lived in a building with an eclectic group who liked to call their collective residence the house, and that's where the gig was. There was Stacy watching me play in the basement of a notoriously debauched punk rock party house. The cops came to bust up the show. Stacy and I escaped together, running down the street in the rain. We fell in love. For each of us, it was our first real love. I had a loving mom and family, but now I was able to branch off on my own and show another person what I had to offer from my heart. When Stacy and I got together, guys from her previous boyfriend's circle began to threaten me. The jocks didn't like the punks back then, and I had on several occasions been beaten up by groups of drunken high school football players, and in one case by a gang of Washington Huskies players. These guys probably looked at such encounters as the culmination of a fun night out. For me, although terrifying, these events somehow confirmed that I was into something new and threatening, and I liked the feeling that the way I looked and the music I made threatened others. Their violence toward people like me also made me understand very clearly that the world wasn't going to be fair. These guys were always much bigger than I was, and they ran in packs. Those beatings were also probably a factor in why later I would see red every time I perceived a wrong done to me or someone close to me and would fight at the drop of a dime. Justifiably or not, I saw myself as the protector, and the street fighting skills I was forced to learn while getting my ass kicked as a teenager meant that I was not reluctant to perform that role with my fists. I had also stopped going to the same school as Stacy pretty soon after we got together. I switched to an alternative high school to make it easier to spend more time playing music. To fulfill the requirements of the alternative school, I had to show up for half an hour every 2 weeks. It proved too great an obligation, and I got thrown out of that school. That was junior year, and that was it for me in school. Yeah, good riddance. I remember thinking I was already crafting a new career for myself. Actually, career may be overstating the case. I didn't make a living playing music back then, and never thought I would, to be honest. That just wasn't part of my calculations. I assumed I would always have to maintain a job. The most lucrative jobs I had were in construction. One summer I managed to save enough to buy a Marshall combo amp. My first restaurant job was at a place called Weiler's. It was popular enough to experience a nightly dinner rush, and even though I was a lowly dishwasher, if the pots and pans weren't clean, the whole kitchen could get thrown out of whack. I really liked the work, liked being part of something with lots of independent, moving parts working toward one goal, liked the characters who made up the staff. After some odd jobs, I landed a full-time slot at Schumer's Bakery. The place took its name from Billy Schumer, a local celebrity known as a pioneer in the sport of hydroplane racing. In Seattle, hydroplanes were considered godlike chariots, carrying our heroes at ridiculously high speeds across Lake Washington. This particular hero turned out to be a hole. I was hired to wash dishes. Scraping out cake pans and muffin tins is hard, physical work, which was fine. Except that on top of it, Schumer made me wash his cars, dig a drainage ditch, and clean up his dogs. He also treated me and all the other employees like garbage, but I couldn't quit it. There weren't any other jobs out there, and I had to make rent. Not long after the panic attack, I went away for a week with my family. Stacy was still in school, so when I got home, I went to meet her after her classes. She came running up and jumped on me, practically tackling me as she told me how much she had missed me. There were tears in her eyes. She did this in front of the entire student body as they spilled out at the end of the school day. Wow, this is quite a reaction. I am one lucky guy. My friends emerged from the building and started whispering to one another just out of earshot. I could tell something was going on. Did they have a surprise for me? Did something happen while I was gone? Then my girlfriend began to cry and told me she had gotten drunk and slept with another guy while I was gone. Right then and there I said we were finished. It wasn't even an issue, not a subject for discussion. But I couldn't understand the situation. Is there something wrong with me? I know she loves me, so how could she do this? I was destroyed. First my panic attack, now this? I just couldn't understand why Stacy would do this to me. My only understanding of such things was based on what I had witnessed with my dad. I retreated into a weird place. Stacy was completely distraught too, and she seemed genuinely contrite. She started calling my mom, my brothers and sisters, and my friends. People said, "Dude, you have to give her another chance." The guy who slept with her apologized, saying it was just a drunken mistake, but I didn't know if I could go back to her after that. I talked to my mom about the whole thing. She said people just make mistakes sometimes. She said it was obvious Stacy had made a mistake and was devastated because of it. I know you love her, my mom says. You have to find it in your heart to forgive her. So Stacy and I were back on. It's the only time I've ever gone back to someone after something like that. Things went great for about a year. I even heard about a job opening at Lake Union Cafe's pasterie that could get me out of Schumer's Bakery. My hair was dyed different colors all the time, so jobs that put me in the public eye were out of the question. Fortunately, the opening was for a dishwasher, and as it turned out, the head pastry chef was an oversized and extremely flamboyant guy who didn't look twice when he saw my hair at the interview. He actually liked the fact that I was a musician. I got the job. Then in 1983, my band 10 Minute Warning got the opening slot at a tour of the Northwest with the big Vancouver punk band DOA. When I came back home from a week or so on the road, I walked into our place to find Stacy hanging out with a guy I knew was part of a crew of people dabbling in heroin. I was worried. We didn't address it directly, but as the signs that she was using began to get more obvious, I would spend more and more time away from our apartment. I didn't want to be proactive. I didn't want to deal. Stacy finally told me she was indeed doing heroin. I moved out. She drowned herself in smack for the next few years. We were done. I struggled to deal with the loss of that first love, all the more so because of the way it happened. At first I was physically ill, so sick that I couldn't hold down any food. Of course, I also needed a new place to stay right away. One of my best friends, Eddie, had a great idea. His mom bought houses and flipped them. He did renovations on the properties for her. He and I moved into one of the places they were fixing up to resell. Eddie and I had first met on the basketball court during a third-grade City League practice. I fouled him too hard while trying to block his shot, the kind of thing you do when you have yet to achieve control of your growing body. He punched me right in the nose in retaliation. For some reason, when boys get into a fight, they will often become inseparable friends. That proved true for me and Ed. As we came up through junior high together, Eddie and I got into all sorts of the same trouble and experienced all the same stuff together. Sports, girls, drugs, grand theft auto. At some point in the 8th grade, as Andy and some other friends and I began playing instruments, Eddie joined in our new fascination with punk rock. He couldn't play the guitar or drums, so he started to focus his attention on being a singer. And why not? He had always been the coolest of us and could certainly stand in front of a crowd without an instrument to hide behind. It didn't take long before he was singing for one of the city's most promising punk bands. Once ensconced in one of Eddie's mom's renovation projects, we developed a routine. I would get up in the morning and go to work at the Lake Union Cafe. Ed would get up and work on the next phase of the refurbishing, drywall, plumbing, electrical, whatever. Most nights we would go to gigs, either playing with our bands or going to see friends' bands. With both of us in bands, we had seemingly unlimited opportunities to meet and sleep with girls. Newly single and working my way out of an emotional funk, I now took advantage of those opportunities. I was 18, and here we were, two best friends living on our own in a big house in a nice neighborhood. One night, Billy Idol, who had just rocketed to mainstream success with his second solo album, Rebel Yell, was to perform on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. It was the first time any of our punk heroes had managed to get on a show as big as this, and we were on a mission to watch it. Though not enough of a mission to stay up for the night. On the way home, drunk, we got pulled over for speeding just blocks from our house. I was at the wheel of my new car, a 1971 Ford Maverick I had picked up for $300. As I rolled down my window, copper penny in my mouth to throw off the breathalyzer, I said to the cop, "But officer, we were only speeding because we can't miss Billy Idol on Carson." Eddie was snickering in the passenger car, and I was stifling laughter myself. The rock gods were with us that night, and the cop let us go. Soon I could see less and less work getting done at the house. Ed was also coming out of his bedroom less frequently. The good times were coming to an end. In Ed's case, once he started doing heroin, it took away his willpower, stripped it absolutely clean. I watched helplessly as my friends slowly sank deeper and deeper into a pit. It seemed I had lost him and didn't have the means to do anything about it. Another casualty to heroin in my innermost circle. Well, that's the end of Chapter 8. Let me know what you guys thought of Chapter 8 in the comments below. That does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Till then, rock on.